High school students across this country are getting set to graduate and figure out where they'll head next to study. In Ontario, competition to get into some of the top universities is fierce, and that is because students' grades are getting better and better all the time. Mike Crawley's been looking into this, actually found out it has been a trend. So tell me what you've noticed in terms of marks in high schools, Mike.
Yeah, so Heather, the data show that the long-term trend in Ontario is that grades have been creeping higher and higher over the course of the past decade or so before the pandemic. And then since 2020, the marks have really spiked. So for instance, in the Toronto District School Board, the average grade 12 mark has jumped 6 percentage points in just a 2-year period. And prior to that, it took 13 years for the average marks to raise that a similar amount. And so you also see it evident in the high end of the spectrum, with grade 12 averages, students having A+ averages of 95 or better. The proportion of those students who are getting into university programs with that kind of mark has been rising. So why is it happening? I spoke with Kelly Gallagher-Mackay. She is an associate professor at Wilfrid Laurier University.
Perhaps marks in the early COVID period may have been part of what teachers used to really encourage and support students. And that strategy may have worked, because what we did see is, unlike the US, we saw an increase in the number of students from all kinds of backgrounds going to university in particular, and no major decrease going to college, which is, again, very different from the US.
So that's very interesting, the why it's happening in her estimation. What about how it is affecting things, the impact on universities and students seeking to study there?
So for the universities, the rising grades make it kind of challenging to assess the people who are applying, especially when they've got large numbers of kids with very, very high marks, all trying to get into those ultra-competitive programs, things like commerce or engineering at the top schools. The University of Toronto's vice provost who oversees admissions told me that these high marks can also make things difficult for students.
They may have an exaggerated sense of their own preparedness, so that when they get to first-year university, it's often a bit of an eye-opener. It's an eye-opener anyway, but I think it can be particularly difficult for students who didn't realize that maybe their grades were not an accurate reflection of their preparedness.
Now, despite all of that, Dwayne Benjamin from the University of Toronto says that the rate of their students successfully progressing on from first year to second year does not actually appear to be dropping.